Now we'd like to start the 9/11 commemoration. I'd like to welcome back Brian Moran, Chief Deputy Attorney General and former Chief Prosecutor of Kitsap County, to the mic for the commemoration of the events of September 11th, 2001.
Good afternoon. I'm indeed honored to be able to speak to you about 9/11, 2001. And to do so, I have to harken back to a day when many of us were children. Some of us weren't born, and others were in years beyond being children. And that's a defining moment in our history. Things like John F. Kennedy's assassination or the assassination of Martin Luther King. And there's not a human being who experienced those events who didn't remember who they were with, where they were, and what they were doing. 9/11, 2001, and 9/11 today, and for every day hereafter, was one of those defining events. The story I have to tell you is a remarkably personal story, and yet it's a very public event that occurred on 9/11 for me. About 8 a.m. that morning, 8:30 a.m., I was on my way to the University of Washington to attend a class. It was a beautiful day, as you all know, just like today, bluebird skies. And as I was driving down 45th Avenue, I needed to get gas, and I pulled into a gas station. I don't listen to the radio in my car, and I noticed things were just a little out of sync. There were people who were really quiet, and they were glued to listening to their cars. And there was a TV set in the gas station. And it dawned on me what was occurring, like it dawned on every single one of you at some point that morning or that day. And I contemplated the tragedy, but I immediately turned inward. And I thought about my particular situation, because at that time my wife, who was pregnant with my youngest daughter, and my 3-year-old were on a plane bound for Seattle. And I was focused on me, and as I did, I sought comfort in mathematics. I mean, as the plane started going into the ground and into buildings, I started doing the math in my head. How many planes can there be in the air at any given time in this country? Maybe 2,000, maybe 3,000, maybe more, maybe less. There were 4 planes down, and it was clear, and it became clearer that it was not an accident, and that it was the work of some evil. And as I thought about that evil, as I was doing the math in my head, how many people could be willing to trade their lives and take so many innocent people with them for so little? Are there 5? Are there 6? I knew and I hoped that there weren't 3,000 or 2,000, so 1 for every plane in the air that day. But I didn't think there would be 4 either. And for the next couple of hours, as I waited and tried to get a hold of my wife on the cell phone, all cell towers were down apparently. Seattle, I couldn't get through. I left message after message. And about 10 o'clock, 10:30 that morning, as I was still focused inward, I heard the words on my message, "I'm okay, we're in Dallas."
Yeah. We're gonna do.
And then it dawned on me that my personal terror and problems had subsided, and then I focused on the enormity of what was occurring and had occurred, and I started focusing outward. And in the days and the weeks that followed, the following day I got a call from a friend, and he just had surgery on his leg, and he was in the Twin Towers, and he made it out when the first plane hit the first building. He had a sense that he needed to be out because he was on crutches, and he made it out when he saw the second plane going into the second tower. I thought about my alumni. I grew up in northern Vermont. I went to a small college, and many of the kids I went to school with then, and many of the kids that are at Middlebury College now, go to work in the financial district of New York City. And over the months, the obituaries started to pile up in my alumni magazine. 1 month it was 10, the next it was 20. I will never forget one young man who was just married who was mentioned in that article. Didn't know him, don't know him now, but I think about him.
I don't know.
But I also think about the good times, the good things. Remember a time when the traffic jam wasn't so bad? Remember a time when people hugged a stranger? Remember a time when you couldn't buy an American flag? I do.
Oh, I will.
And I know you do.
Okay.
You know, one of the instant thoughts I had after I was focused outward and away from my terror and fears were abated. I immediately fixed on my role as a prosecutor for so many years, and I was focusing on the evil that occurred. How could anybody's do something so horrific, so beyond the pale, so beyond my comprehension? and bring so much loss to so many people.
Okay.
And I learned long ago in my job as a prosecutor and living through 9/11 and a lot of other things that we'll never understand it, and we don't need to understand it. But what we need to do, what I need to do, is because I can't understand, I simply choose to remember. That we can't understand, let's put aside, and let's choose to remember. So I choose to remember our public safety heroes, our police officers who left their precincts, our firemen who left, the firewomen who left their station houses, our EMS personnel who left their ambulances in the safety of anonymity, and they ran into a building, and surely they must have known that they may not come out. And I remember that type of heroism and that type of dedication and that type of courage. And I remember them, and I remember their families. And I want to recognize all of those here today who worked so hard, so tirelessly, so dedicated to keep us safer, and that they will be prepared when the worst happens to make sure that we're taken care of. And I hope you would join me in a round of applause for those people with us today. I also choose to remember men and women like us that go to work, maybe on a subway or in a bus or a car, and they go to a building, a tall building in New York City, and they go to their ordinary desks, and they go to their jobs, and their desks and their jobs and their offices are much like ours. They have pictures of their loved ones, their children. There's artwork hanging on their offices and on their walls. And I think about those folks and what they give. They were heroes in their own way. Their mission was to make their lives a little bit better, and the lives of their children and their families a little bit better. So I choose to remember them on September 11th. I remember a group of ordinary citizens who went on an ordinary plane to do ordinary things at an ordinary time, and were called to do extraordinary things on Flight 93 at the words, "Let's roll," cast into the consciousness of this country. And I remember their folks, and their families, and their loved ones. And finally, I choose to remember and ask you to remember their loved ones, their families, their colleagues, their relatives, and all those who grieve as we do with them, for them, on this day, September 11th, 2008. At this moment, we'll have a ceremony where we'll toll the bell, and then ask that we all join in a moment of silence for those who fell on 9/11 and those who have fallen since.
Brian mentioned the tolling of the bell will take place 7 times in remembrance of 9/11.
Honor guard, out and hoot! Uniform personnel, freeze and horse!
Please join me in a moment of silence as we remember those who lost their lives.